welcome to The Found Cause. We found our cause and serve the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Michael, man behind the machine. To my front, your virtual front, it's...
Sebastian, the archivist.
Sebastian, we took a hiatus yesterday. A rare Found Cause live-action outing where we went and saw the cultural phenomenon, the Odyssey. It has been getting de-hyped, anti-hyped by, I think, both sides of the political aisle for various reasons. Christopher Nolan is the director, very famous, lauded director, definitely director of men movies, and the Odyssey is definitely a man's movie. We're both conservative. If you watch this podcast any length of time, you know that we tend on conservative politics, but I'd say we are principled in that we are Christians first. And so we're not like diehard ride with the talking heads of the Conservative Party. And because of that, I would say I was surprisingly pleased that the movie was good. I don't know your thoughts. What are your general thoughts, Sebastian?
Me too. I came in with a negative impression. Did I care too much about this movie at all? No, going in. But then by the end, it's like, oh, all the critiques, they were not really that solid.
And this is why we're doing an episode on it, this what I'm about to say. Yep. I think that there is an especially insidious moment in cultural movements when the great fear is it turns out not to be real. And as much as some conservative commentators can continue to say, oh, this movie sucks for these reasons, it really doesn't. And when audiences realize that, they throw the baby out with the bathwater and they say, wow, you told me this movie was going to be bad, and you still say that, even though it was not. I don't think I believe you. You're full of it. And part of that reaction of like, wow, it wasn't awful, suddenly that thing, the Odyssey in this case, gets elevated way above its station. So yeah, it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. But the Odyssey as a story is Greek mythology. And for whatever reason, I mean, we could talk all day, I guess, on why the like old classical conversations, like classical education, is obsessed with the classics. They call it the classics because classical things are into them. But the Odyssey, the Iliad, Caesar's... I'm forgetting all my classic names. Old authors, really old authors, Roman authors, Greek authors, all the old stuff is like required reading. The Aeneid, Gallic Wars by Caesar, that's what I was looking for. These old writings are lauded as like the best of human history. And I think that's wrong. And I think there's a lot of Christians that are in this movement of, because we have reacted so strongly against public education, or at least the way public education is currently being run in the US, we've reacted to, let's go back to the way we used to do things. And we've gone so far back that we went to like the Enlightenment obsession with things that the Enlightenment shouldn't have been obsessed with, and that is Greek and Roman mythology, or just writers in general. And while I don't want to undersell the ancients and say that they were all dumb, because they were not, and I think that maybe with their pedigree, like their genetic pedigree, they probably had better genes than us, just based on the length of time it's been over the years. You know, our genes have been degrading gradually, so they probably were like generally sharper than people today. Mm-hmm. However, they were not more Christian, and Christianity really is, as we've advocated many times in this podcast before, the single biggest boon you can give to society, because God is light, and his light casts out darkness and produces fruit. And so all this to say, I would hate for the like backwards, insidious, secret reaction to the Odyssey actually being good to promote Greek values, Greek mythology, and or like elevate it to this thing that it never should have been. And honestly, because of the bad education standards of today, classical education really is falling by the wayside, and like people try to recover it, whatever, but it can stay dead. That thing can stay dead. Old evil should stay dead. And I wouldn't want to see this like boon the classics again, because the classics to me are worth killing. It's not that they should be banned, but I don't think they should be lauded because of their bad values. I'm ranting here, but this is really a connection a long time ago, or several months ago, we did a reaction video to a Neo-Pagan European racist guy who was saying that we should adopt paganism again and that pagan values are great. Just look at the pagan epics. He picked like some Germanic ones, but also these Greek ones. The Odyssey would be included. And so the whole purpose of today is to examine the Odyssey. I thought a perfectly good movie. I think better than the book. And examine I guess the movie and its values, but also the epic, like the original story and its values, and where the movie improved and why it improved, where it didn't improve and why it didn't improve, and how that compares to Christian values. And are pagan values actually better than Christian values? Is the Odyssey a better story because it's written by pagans, or is it better if it's written by Christian influenced people? There you go, the thesis. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pass it to you because I've been talking a lot, Sebastian. Values. What would you say is a value of the, like a main value of the Odyssey original story, or it could be shared with the movie or not, but the original play?
Yeah, the main one that they both shared in common was the idea of Nostos, of homecoming. Mm-hmm. That it's a whole journey of Odysseus doing whatever it takes to get back home to his family, to his wife and his son. That is definitely something that people today and in the ancient world would have admired, that kind of determination and skill, tenacity that Odysseus displays to overcome whatever obstacles are in his way to make it home.
Yeah, and what would you call, I guess, what's the virtue there? So like homecoming is definitely a theme. The whole theme of the movie is trying to get back home. Mm-hmm. Like to me, the virtue is and maybe this is not shared with the Greeks who would have written it, but the virtue is I am responsible for my wife and children and the island of which I rule, because Odysseus is the king of the island. We're not going to explain the whole plot here, by the way. You should look up the Odyssey if you don't know it. Odysseus is trying to get back home from the Trojan War. It takes him 10 years, right? Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah.
Gone for 20. He is shirking his duties as a husband as long as he's gone. And so, like, let me get back to my duties as quick as possible. My wife and children and island are suffering because of my absence. That's, like, the virtue to me is responsibility and like, bearing your duty. Love for family.
Yeah, definitely. And and sticking with the movie, because, I might get sidetracked with Epic itself. The movie makes Odysseus a very, very smart and also a relatable person. Approachable meaning that he is a human with emotions that you can empathize with, someone that has been traumatized by war, and also someone who misses his family. You really don't see that in the epic as much. Yes, it's implied, obvious that he wants to go home because who wants to be stuck at sea for 20 years, but you can see it clearly in the movie.
Yeah, to me in the play, and this seems to align with like pagan values, it's less of my people are suffering, I need to get back home to do my duty, and more of like people are stealing my gal, like I need to go get my stuff. People are trying to steal my stuff, and like it's my rightful claim to go get my stuff. So it's more of like a reclaiming of his stuff, and that's why he's such a cool guy, because he comes back and takes all his stuff back, and like he doesn't really he takes his sweet time, honestly. So the American version, the modern version, Christopher Nolan is British, so I guess British version, but the Hollywood version, recent, the longest length of Odysseus' journey in the story and the movie is he spends 3 years stuck at sea, many episodes of him getting attacked by monsters and his crew eventually all dying, and then he's the only one left on an island with a nymph named Calypso, and she's hot. He stays there for 7 years, and they weren't just making macaroni necklaces. I don't know. They weren't crafting. They were sleeping together, and so for 7 years he stays with this woman. Now he's kind of trapped in that she's like kind of magic, and then also his boat is destroyed. And so it's not like a super easy way to get off this island. However, he's definitely sleeping. Like he spends 7 years there, pretty non-dedicated to getting to Ithaca, and he kind of pines away in the play of like, oh, maybe I should probably get back to Ithaca at some point in these 7 years. And then eventually he she releases him, and also he decides like I'm willing to risk life or limb by getting like a basic raft to get back to Ithaca, his home. In the movie, I don't think they like that whole aspect of Odysseus basically like not pursuing home with all he's got. Like I think it is a Christian value more than was displayed in the Odyssey, at least. That Odysseus is like driving relentlessly to get back to his duty and will stop at nothing besides like honoring his men and like trying to save lives. He'd stop at nothing to get back home. Whereas in the true Odyssey, the real pagan values, he isn't all about saving life. One, he's more callous than that. And then two, yeah, he's like getting home when he feels like it. Like you said, nobody wants to be lost at sea for a while. So like he needs to go get his stuff, and it's more comfortable at home. And he is the rightful owner of his stuff back at home, and nobody wants to take his stuff. But it's not like a driving fatherly return in the play.
That was, I think I commented that immediately after I said the movie. Whenever I had read the Odyssey, I got the impression that Odysseus was a jerk. Let's call him a jackass. I would call him a jackass, in which he sees his men in the play as expendable. That is the impression that I've always gotten. And now the movie was softened, much more gentle. This man, yes, is he stern? Is he a soldier? Is he disciplined? Yes. Is he cold to his men sometimes? Sure. But he has regard for his men. He weeps and is deeply troubled in the movie when his men die. In the Odyssey, comment down below if you got the impression that he deeply cares for his men. I did not see that when reading the play, because the impression I get from the ancient world is that if you are of the aristocracy, life of commoners is expendable.
Yeah. I mean, and that can happen in like action flicks too, and whatever, right? Like all these people are expendable. But like you said, in the film, it's more powerful when it takes on the Christian virtues, and that is like love of life and protecting of life and wanting to protect your men, and like definitely fraternity, brotherhood is something that Neo-Pagan guy was all about. But in the actual pagan sources, it's not as strong as Christian sources, because fraternity very quickly becomes who's actually my blood. Like we might have all said we're brothers, but at the end of the day we're not, and so I'm sticking out for me and my own, and you guys can rot in the belly of a beast. Whereas the Odysseus of the movie is more likable, and the audiences react better because he does care about his men more and wants to save life, and jumps back in the Cyclops' den when half of the men are going to be left there, and is very concerned about the choice between the whirlpool and Scylla, the multi-headed monster, Hydra. And so anyways, that is an improvement, and it is a good thing, and gets the point across of like love of brothers and saving of life in the American and the Hollywood version of the Odyssey. But yeah, it's not a pagan value as much as they might. Like that's probably the biggest thing they thump and drum is like honor, courage, duty, and fraternity. Like that's like fascism right there, right? And Neo-Paganism, whatever. But I think on all those points, paganism is weaker. So yeah, like we share those together. Guess what? Christianity is also about those things, but Christianity is fuller, because fraternity is not just blood deep. It's like to your neighbor, and these men are Odysseus' neighbors. Yeah, I didn't even finish. Sorry, I'm rambling here because I didn't finish the Calypso thing in the Hollywood version of the movie. Instead of like chilling with Calypso, she has drugged him, and he's forget with the lotus flower, which is not in the play version. He gets lotus flowers earlier. And so he's like doesn't even remember his wife and kids, and she relents by like the god's intervention. She relents to letting him leave, and like it weans him off the drugs, and then he remembers. And as soon as he remembers, he goes back. And it kind of insinuates that he wasn't ready to go back before, so this like was the opportune time for him to go back. But like it's not a character flaw of his, because he's been drugged. So they make him better because he's not. He is, whenever he has an option, he is driving to go back home.
Mm-hmm. On that note of him being better, right after he escapes from the den of the Cyclops in the play, he ruins all his clever scheme of how to escape by telling the Cyclops, "It is I, Odysseus, who blinded you." Before he had said it's nobody. There's this whole scene in which that tricks the Cyclops into yelling, "Nobody's attacking me, nobody's," because he tells him his name is Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Odysseus' theme is him being clever all throughout the play. Doesn't happen in the movie, which good, because that was a really stupid thing for him to do in the play and comes to bite him back later on in the rest of the play until he makes it home. So that made him significantly more likable, in which he shoots the Cyclops out of revenge instead of hubris. That's another theme in these Greek plays, in which humans who are filled with hubris, they face the wrath of the gods. And he rightfully does in the play, because he didn't have to tell the Cyclops his name or what he did to him, even though he was entitled to defend himself from the Cyclops. But then Poseidon curses him and ruins the rest of the voyage until he finally makes it home.
And I think like seeing sin, pride, hubris punished is obviously Christian as well. We know that all sin deserves death, and so when you see sin punished, look, we're aligned. Like, this is not an anti-Christian thing. You wouldn't be missing this if Christians designed the Odyssey versus pagans.
But was it really a punishment of sin, though? Because who attacked who first in the den of the Cyclops?
Well, in both, the Cyclops attacks first. And so, they'd have the right to defend themselves, right? And so they do. The problem, the film kind of makes the gods fake. Like, everybody like talks about the gods, but they never actually show up. And so are they real or not? Like, it's kind of a question in the film. The monsters are definitely real in the film, but the gods, maybe not. However, the play, they definitely are real. And in the play, the punishment from Poseidon, who's the father of these lascivious gods, the father of many things, including the Cyclopses, he gets mad at Odysseus for like maiming one of his many children, and decides to curse the whole crew, which is like way outsized punishment, because first of all, like the Cyclops was the problem here, and then I guess Poseidon dooms however many men are on this boat, but many, for the blinding of an eye. Like this is the reason an eye for an eye is a command of the Bible, because you might be tempted to take a whole life for an eye. And so God says only an eye for an eye. And so these gods are capricious and evil. And frankly, I don't know about you, Sebastian, but I think the Homer, writer of the original, like, thinks that's what the audience will think too. Like, I think they don't expect the gods to be good. And so is that a good value? that your gods suck? Like, the whole thing is kind of a satire against the gods in a way, because Odysseus is like an anti-god hero. He is in the film too. He's like a defier of the gods or something.
Whoa, you're sounding more like a historian now, because that was actually a commentary by the ancients, that they thought that playwriters, philosophers were too atheistic because they thought the gods were capricious, and then they laughed at the common people for believing in such sad, embarrassing deities. So yes, you're onto something.
Yeah, so I guess like Homer was a big lib.
Yes, he was.
Didn't take the gods seriously, at least. But if we're judging the Odyssey then for its like values, it has big lib values on the god side of things. So it doesn't take the gods seriously, and they are evil. And so if that's where you're sourcing like your knowledge about Poseidon, is that like the things spoken in the Odyssey are true because you're a Neo-Pagan or whatever, your religion is of somebody who didn't take it seriously. Like, this guy who wrote the Odyssey didn't take these gods seriously, and they are capricious and evil. So you either have to like rework the way the gods are, in which case, like, where are you getting your information about how Poseidon works? Because we don't have, like, the sources we have are all kind of like the Odyssey. The gods in paganism are clearly such a gigantic problem. Apologetically, they aren't consistent. Even in the Odyssey, the sun god has cattle on an island, and it's also referenced as Apollo. And this is one of these things that, like, Helios is the Greek god. Maybe you know better, Sebastian. Helios is the Greek god, but also Apollo is a sun god.
Yeah.
So which one is it? Like, the problem of these gods being inconsistent in how they're described because they're made up is a problem even in this, like, official stamped work of pagan folklore.
Inconsistencies, but yeah, in the specifically in the film, it's another disproportionate punishment. It's, as we're on the theme of an eye for an eye, the slaughtering of the cattle because the men are starving in that island, and then Helios, by extension in the movie at least, through other gods, causes the ship to get destroyed and the men perish and Odysseus gets cast adrift.
That one I'm not so sure if it's, like, totally disproportionate. I mean, think of God killing the man who reached out to catch the ark. You know, he touched a holy object, he died. God warned you, did what he said not to. So in this case,
yeah, they were. You're right. Yeah, they were the what's that? The oh my goodness, this it's not a deity, but from the river Styx, he warns them, don't eat the cattle. Does he warn his men in the play? Because in the movie he does.
In the movie, he does. I don't know. And it's a good question because, yes, in the movie, Odysseus alone is given this prophecy that he's got to go a certain place and then he'll encounter this island with the sun god's cattle, and his men will eat, when they eat the cattle, they'll incur the sun god's wrath, but Odysseus will be spared. But he makes the men leave in the film so that only Odysseus hears this, and then Odysseus shares this with the men, and they believe him, but then eventually they're starving on this island, so they do eventually eat the cattle. So to me, it's not disproportionate, but it does bear the question, like, is that an American or a Western change to this pagan myth that Odysseus warns them? And two, like, why the prophecy only to Odysseus? I don't know. There's a lot of questions here. I mean, some of these are just like story beats, and so I don't know if we can really call them value differences, but certainly not a play that there's no, like, I guess the value there is starve to death, because, like, the gods intentionally keep them on this island to make them defile themselves by eating the cattle. And then as soon as they do break and eat the cattle, he lets them go. The gods let them go to go die at sea. And so God, to my knowledge, is not like, he tests men. There's evidences of God testing men. But the gods were, like, waiting, like, they were going to wait out people until men sinned. And that's not how God operates.
In other words, sometimes those gods salivate of people screwing up so they can go get them.
Yes, that's right. This was not a test. This was, we need you. We want you to sin so that we can destroy you.
Yeah, I double checked. It seems that he does warn them in both. So Odysseus warns his men, please don't eat this, in both. So that's fair. But still, on the theme of the gods being capricious, one of the reasons why Odysseus is blessed by the gods, especially Athena, is because of how clever he is, and not clever in that intelligent. Well, he is intelligent, but in how deceptive he can be. Mm-hmm. He's really good at tricking people. Trojan horse being one of them, and then tricking the Cyclops by coming up with this scheme. It didn't show in the movie, but coming up with this scheme of nobody is my name. So when he then shouts, nobody's attacking me. And then showing up as a beggar on the island so that nobody would notice him. So again, he likes to use deception. And that is a trait that the gods were amused by. That's why they kept supporting him and cheering him on for their amusement. Last time I checked in the Bible, I don't think God is amused by using people as entertainment.
I mean,
a sport.
I mean, yeah, it depends on the consequences. I don't think real God, doesn't necessarily easily fit into some of our boxes. And as we both admitted on this podcast, lying isn't a sin. It's the
Yeah.
well, I guess liars, liars reside in the lake of fire. So it depends on what we mean by liars. But lies themselves, deception itself, isn't necessarily a lie, because a lie is like under oath or like trying to deceive somebody for their bad benefit. But a good lie can be like the lie that Rahab gave to the guards in Jericho, and that is the men aren't here when they really were here, and she's deceiving them for good. And so the question is Odysseus lying for good? So I think favoring like cleverness and deception could be okay, but I don't think that's probably not one of like the flag waving values that the Neo-Pagans are into, of like, yeah, and we love lying too, because obviously lying is a very dangerous game, because it can bleed into all the areas that are much more tempting to lie in, like in court, or when charged, even not in court, but like when somebody asks you, are you doing a certain sin, and you say no, or you lie to your kids and wife, not for their benefit, but for their detriment, because you want to continue sinning. Like all those kinds of things are bad, and that's clearly a value. If people value deception as like a great deal thing, then why wouldn't they do these other evil things? Which is why the Neo-Pagans aren't into that old virtue of the Greeks.
I concur. I think we may have briefly mentioned this, but xenia, hospitality, friendship. It's one of the 4 loves of Greek in the Greek language. Is it used in the Bible? I'll have to check on that, but the other 2, philia and agape, are definitely used in scripture. Xenia is a theme that I think gets overdone in the movie, in which there's the law or the rule of Zeus, in which you do not harm strangers. Was that a thing in the ancient world? 100% yes. Completely correct. I just think they bring it up way too much in the movie, but
you know what they do in the movie? I thought this is very telling. Yes, it's definitely a major theme in the play, and they kind of like bring, in the film, in the movie. And in the movie, they like try to bring the whole thing around, that basically everything bad in Odysseus's life started from his breaking of the rule by making the Trojan horse, and the Trojan horse was essentially a lie that leveraged people being hospitable, but they were not hospitable. What are we even talking about? Like, the Trojans took war spoil. That's not being hospitable. Whatever. But they were claiming that this was like him breaching the standards of hospitableness by deceiving the Trojans into taking the horse in, and then breaking this hospitableness is what like essentially causes the Bronze Age collapse and Odysseus all his troubles. And so it's a big theme in the play, because his people in Ithaca are always welcoming strangers, and lots of strangers are welcoming Odysseus and whatever else. But what Penelope, Odysseus' wife, says in the film, she's explaining the law of Zeus to, I think, Odysseus' son, somebody like they're welcoming a beggar at the feast, and they say, it's the law of Zeus that you welcome strangers. And she says, yes, it is the like self-evident law of the gods that we should do unto others as we would have done unto ourselves, which is not a quote from any Greek author. I'm sure we're all familiar where that quote comes from. It's from the law and from Jesus more famously, but from the law of God, from Leviticus. And that is not a Greek value. That's not what the hospitality is. That you could include that in hospitality, because obviously that entails hospitality as well, but it also entails a lot more, and it's not a Greek value. So that's a straight up import from Christianity in the film. It's not in the original Odyssey.
Yeah, I was wondering, where the heck did they get that from? Rhetorical questions. They got it from Christianity. That's definitely not a concept in the Greek world. The reason why you treated guests at court following the rule of Zeus was you could be entertaining the gods. That guest could be a god in disguise. And there's, I'm blanking on which mythological scene that happens in. Zeus and I think Hermes appear in someone's house disguised as people. So that's where the rule of Zeus comes in.
Which is an interesting tie into Christianity, because Paul, the Apostle Paul, says the same thing, that we should welcome guests because we may be entertaining angels in our midst. So basically it's similar reasoning. But also Christianity already has treat others as you would have yourself treated. So yes, be hospitable, but like that's really an extension rule, a lower level rule than the higher level rule, and Greeks don't have the higher level rule.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in Greece would have felt, I mean, besides trauma from the war, anyone would have felt bad from the destruction or the infiltration that happened in Troy. It's like, yeah, kill the enemy, do it. Good job, Odysseus.
Yes. Whereas the film, I don't know if this is really like a positive Christian value, but maybe Odysseus like deeply regrets the destruction of Troy. It's like a big reason why he's like PTSD'd on Calypso's island for 7 years is that he deeply regrets the sack of Troy. Which in some level I'm like, well, okay, war is justified. And so if it's a justified war, like total destruction of the enemy is allowable. But on the other hand, I think one of the things the pagans hate and they claim about Christianity is that Christianity made the West soft, because we value mercy, that God values mercy. And so we now value mercy, and we value forgiveness, and we value restraint, whereas we should value like strength and dominance and whatever else. And so definitely not an ancient pagan value that was on display in the Odyssey. And I would say that of the benefits that Odysseus' character gets in the film, this one shows that it's like the origin for him valuing human life and why he cares about his crew more than maybe he did, was because he saw like the destruction his small acts can have on like whole cultures, women, children, great works of art, the gods, whatever.
In which it turns out that they were the sea people all along. That was the twist that the wife finds out.
I don't understand that one either. I think she just means like you're the origin of like the breakdown of society. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't talked about Penelope either. So Odysseus' wife, definitely a pagan virtue was her virginity, or her purity. She's not a virgin, obviously. She's his wife, but her purity, that she does not take another husband, that she waits for him for 20 years. And this one's tough to me because on one hand, like obviously Christians are also into purity pretty famously, and monogamy and all that. And so on one hand, it's like, yeah, we share that value. On the other hand, was it good that, like, for all intents and purposes, Odysseus did abandon his wife? If not for the 10 years on tour, for the 7 that he was with Calypso, right? And maybe the 3 that he spent like gallivanting around who knows where, because he chooses to take like a dangerous long way. Like he abandons his wife. And in the film even, let alone the play, he kind of knows that like he doesn't really want to go home. That's why he takes the weird route. And so yeah, he abandoned her, which is a divorce-worthy thing. Like she could legally divorce him. She doesn't need to. But Penelope decides not to. Clearly she doesn't know all the details about his gallivanting either. But it's definitely seen as a virtue that she stays true. But it's a hard one to me because in doing so, she completely destroys the family and the state that she lives in. And she's one kind of woke-ish thing that some people complain about the film Penelope is that she has a very small rant where she says, we've been waiting 20 years and they're like fighting over who's going to be king, but I've been queen this whole time. Like you're trying to take as we've been pretending there's an empty throne, but like I've been sitting in this throne for 20 years. But what makes it kind of not woke to me is that, yeah, like in all society's falling apart. So, yeah, you've kind of been sitting on the throne really terribly for 20 years. And so was it good? Like, is it a virtue that she let the city rot for 20 years? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe. Like her husband was still alive. So like in the end, she's vindicated that she didn't take another husband. But I think that's where it calls for discernment. Like even if he was alive after 15 years, like you've been abandoned, and for the good of the people, take another husband. And like, which one's better? Avoiding divorce, legal, justifiable divorce, and the saving and preserving of life in Ithaca, or the destruction of life in Ithaca for the sake of your lost husband? I don't know. That's a hard one.
Yeah, definitely the the play would portray that behavior as good. The movie chose to make her more than just a one-dimensional character that's just plain loyal to her husband by giving her a mental breakdown. I don't know. I would probably have a mental breakdown if there's hundreds of freaks that are chasing after me, demanding me to marry them or die, and then have my son executed. So that I appreciated that in modernism in the movie, but definitely an unwise decision to let her kingdom collapse. That was not in the play, but I'm glad that they actually brought out that her inaction caused decay in their society.
And a very similar, I would consider it a pagan value, because I don't know that it maps like one to one with some real value from Christianity, but they make an emphasis of Odysseus's dog, that he leaves this dog that's like a pup when he leaves, and the dog is waiting for his master's return, and therefore like is super old, is 20 years old when Odysseus returns, and dies as soon as Odysseus like sees him and recognizes him. And this is like it's like basically Penelope except for the dog, and that the Penelope like waits for him these 20 years and doesn't take another husband, and the dog doesn't take another master and waits for 20 years, and finally his like duty is fulfilled when Odysseus comes back, and like there's faithfulness there and some sad pang that the faithfulness is rewarded with death, but like is this obsession with loyalty righteous, like at the detriment to everything else? I don't think so. It seems to me like a pagan imbalance that they would value this one thing, loyalty, in any color, right? Wife's loyalty or dog's loyalty, over everything. And I don't think that is true, because you're like, a man is not God. Your human master is not God. And so loyalty to Odysseus is not the ultimate. And Odysseus, I think in the play too, gives his wife an out. Like, if I'm not back by the time our son is of age, take another husband. And she refuses to. So all the more, I don't see it as a properly ordered virtue. It seems like a pursuit of one virtue in detriment to all others for Penelope and the dog.
Indeed. So can see if there's anything else that stood out. Talked about him treating the men as I got the impression that he treated people as expendable in the play. In the movie, he's tired, yeah, sure, but he has regard for his men. But what were you going to say?
When he comes home, now I'm getting to the homecoming scene, so he does make it back. Sure. His loyal servant, there is some, like, I think they benefit. I don't know how much, I don't remember how much the play emphasizes his like lead servant is this shepherd guy, or pig herder, who's loyal, on to the point of loyalty, is loyal. But more than that, to me, like the pig herder guy is better, has better virtue than the others to me, because he's not just loyal to Odysseus, he's also like trying to maintain Odysseus's household, because he actually thinks Odysseus is dead, at least in the film. I don't know if in the play he like maintains that Odysseus is alive or something, but in the film he kind of admits that Odysseus is probably dead, but for the sake of like the household, let's keep like my master's household alive. And so he is an increasingly rare, faithful servant awaiting his master's return, even if the master doesn't return in his lifetime, which to me is a very biblical virtue of like waiting on the Lord's return. Jesus gives the allegories of waiting, well, like the 7 wise virgins and the 7 foolish virgins that are waiting for their bridegroom's arrival, and some of them didn't bring oil and they fall asleep. Like those, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be a unfaithful servant while the master is away. And so in that way, like this is a very definitely Christian virtue. So if it's shared with the pagans, so be it. But it's definitely, that maps one-to-one with Christian virtue of waiting and being dutiful even when the master is away.
Would you say then that his son, Telemachus, also displayed a balanced
Mm-hmm.
sense of love and loyalty?
Yeah, I honestly, he's such a minor character in the play
Hmm.
that I don't remember what he's like in the play at all. In the film, he's a major character, and yeah, in the film, I'd say he doesn't display pagan virtue. He displays Christian virtue of like wanting to honor the father, wanting to balance honoring the father and loyalty to the father to sustaining the state. Like he's the one that's driving. Like somebody needs to take over. My mom's rule is throwing everything into chaos. I need to go figure this out and determine if my dad is dead or not, and like take the throne regardless, only for the sake of the state. And as soon as his dad is back, he's like, yeah, take the throne, daddy. So all of that is good from a Christian perspective to me. There's nothing like conflicting pagan versus Christian values. There's just pure Christian value. What is I talked this to you, Sebastian, after the movie, and whether or not Odysseus comes back, proves that he's Odysseus by winning a challenge, and he kills everybody, right? Kills all the suitors that have been pursuing his wife. Um, is that justified? In the film, maybe, because one, he doesn't kill everybody. He only kills what seems like people that were either that he knew somehow were directly involved with an assassination plot against his son, and not just a plot, but like they were gonna do it. Like the poison was there, and they all tried to knife him to death. So like, it wasn't just a attempt; it was super attempts.
Hmm.
So it was, in that way, it's kind of like self defense, or like giving you your just rewards for death for death, life for life. Um, and in the film, again, he stops. Like once he kills the main conspirator, everybody bows the knee, and he takes the throne and doesn't, he gives mercy on everyone, even though they were previously fighting him and trying to kill him. Now that they've all bowed the knee, he gives mercy on them. I don't know in the play. I thought he kills all the suitors, just all of them in the play. And like, is that justified? Is even the film's version of things justified? Because Odysseus shoots first. He reveals he is Odysseus and then kills a guy without being threatened. And so like this mass murder revenge spree is definitely a virtue / enjoyment of the original Odyssey play, of
Hmm.
seeing the main character take what's his and bring vengeance on his enemies. And in the film, similar, but it's like ultimately the big punchline of it really isn't the death of the bad guys, it's the mercy on the good guys, to me at least. Like the moment isn't killing the bad guys, it's his mercy on like when everybody bows the knee and he takes his place as the rightful king. Like that's the moment, not the finally the enemies are dead. And to me, that is a difference between pagan and Christian virtues here. Is that like, the pursuit of killing your enemies is only half the battle. And to me, the play, at least to my recollection, does not emphasize the crowning as the glory. It's really the killing that's the glory.
Right. Right. No, that definitely was the vibe I got when I've read the play itself. And I needed a recap of the play. The suitors do plot to assassinate Telemachus, but they don't. They're not successful. Like they don't execute the plot as well as they did in the movie.
Hmm.
It's more like an idea, and they lay in ambush. He's warned by divine intervention, and makes it to the what's herder, shepherds, the pig herder, the blind man's
Hmm.
hut by avoiding the ambush. Whereas in the movie, they are this close to stabbing him in the face because they had already assassinated his guards. So
Yeah.
the movie definitely gives more of a justification for Odysseus and Telemachus to seek revenge on the suitors. Whereas in the play, it's more like they thought about killing him. They did not actually jump to the action of killing Telemachus or Odysseus.
Mm-hmm.
And I had forgotten that one of the suitors tries to dissuade the other ones from killing Odysseus' son, and he is warned to not attend, the gathering where the challenge happens. And then Athena induces the suitor to go anyway, and then he dies with the rest of the suitors.
There you go.
I forgot
So
about
what
that.
kind of value is that? I guess I don't know. It's some weird make you feel mixed feelings. Yeah. What interesting also. I'm just full of it now. Another good thing about the film, and I don't remember how the play ends on this detail, I think is anti-pagan, whether it's in the film or the play, is this is going to sound wrong, the non-patriarchal nature of it. Like, as much as Odysseus is the patriarch of the household and everybody like bows the knee properly, I think the son gives the father his due honor. The father doesn't lord it over his son, in so much as he clearly is old and hasn't been there in 20 years. And so he takes the excuse of returning and needing to fulfill some god's request to take his wife and sail out on open sea and let his son rule. The son has been looking to rule. So like he passes the reins to his son, who is worthy and will rule well. That kind of like not antagonizing your son and getting out of the way of yourself, especially when you're retiring, is to me the essence of one, the command to honor our father and mother from God, and which is shared with any society that's going to survive, has that same value, but to varying degrees of what honor means, but in this case shared. And then two, the command for fathers not to I'm forgetting the word, but grieve their son, like don't antagonize your sons, which of many forms of antagonizing, I think the most egregious form of antagonizing fathers to sons is the father refusing to give up his like mantle as patriarch and like becoming more and more senile, essentially, like losing his ability to be a good patriarch. It's like a very common problem with truly patriarchal societies, where there's like one great grandfather who rules everything. Like nobody's ever able to take the reins, and as soon as he's dead, like he's been growing in incompetence over the years, and as soon as he's dead, there's giant power vacuum void struggle, and like the new leaders aren't as good because they haven't been practicing, and that like holding on to power and patriarchy for so long is a very negative thing, and it is definitely a pagan virtue. The patriarchy, holding on to your very last breath, taking your due, is super strong pagan virtue, and that's how they ran society. Was great grandfather was by nature of him being the great grandfather the top dog, even if he was a senile old man. And so I don't remember how the play ends in that front, but the ceding of Odysseus to his son in the film, to me, is a Christian virtue as opposed to a pagan virtue.
There was a scene, to your question about how it ends, that the movie didn't have, in which there's a final test by Penelope to Odysseus on the bed, if it's because it was cut out from the tree, that grew inside the palace. And only Odysseus would have known that because he slept on that bed. And he ends up being king and lives happily ever after. So that's how it ends.
Does not cede. And not to say like you can be king too, but I think extra virtue points then to Christian virtue points to the film.
No, I think that was a nice ending and gives conclusion to all the things that Telemachus is going. He went from being a teenager, pretty much, even though it's Tom Holland in the movie, to now a king. He has grown up and taken the reign of ruling in a good way.
And that's
and Odysseus recognizes why he exiles himself, because he recognizes that he murdered all the people, whereas I don't think the ancient Greeks would have given anything about any. I will say something else. They wouldn't cared about him murdering all the people.
Yeah, that's another good point, because the gods like require that he go and honor the dead that he never properly buried, and that's the excuse he has for leaving at the very end of the film version. And like, again, I don't know the play. It sounds like the play does not end that way, but the film is definitely on the like atheist side, as far as like these gods are not real, and so it's really like Odysseus' way of dealing with PTSD, or like you're saying with sin. Like he knows that he has blood in his hands, kind of like King David is not allowed by God to build the temple because he has so much blood in his hands. Let Solomon instead. It's like that kind of. Honestly, maybe it's looking way too into the play or to the film here, but it seems like where also they're getting that kind of thought, and that is that like you have too much blood in your hands. let your son rule, which is like exactly what David. It's like the David and Solomon thing, verbatim.
Yeah, there were a lot of random Christian themes sprinkled here and there. And I don't know if I can if we want to go into this theme, but when Agamemnon in the movie sets out for war, he sacrifices his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if you mentioned that earlier.
No.
The movie says something along the lines of the size of the sacrifice, like the importance of the sacrifice, it equals the size of the blessing. So implying that giving up your child, your daughter, your son is going to give you huge blessing for going out to war. So that was surprising. I don't remember if in the Iliad Agamemnon sacrifices anybody. Comment down below if he does. But that immediately made me think of in the movie, it's like, oh, what if someone of infinite value sacrifices himself? Or brothers, does that mean that the sacrifice has infinite blessing? But that's just me.
It also, I don't think, is a pagan value, because I think the exact words are like a Thanos line. It's definitely like an allusion to Thanos as opposed to Christianity, but whatever, Thanos is an allusion to Christianity then, and that the sacrifice's worth is the cost to you personally. So like, it doesn't matter if it's 1 ram or 1,000 rams, or 1 child or 1,000 children. If the 1,000 rams was not significant to you, the sacrifice is not more significant to one poor shepherd with 1 ram. Like, he sacrifices, that sacrifice might be worth more. The pagan, I don't, as far as I know, the Greeks may be different here, but paganism in general, that is not the case. 1,000 rams is absolutely objectively worth more than one ram, because the gods are hungry, because the gods are so like humanized, and politically leveraged, right? Like, the sacrifices needed to be numerous because it ultimately like fed the priest class. 1 ram was not just because it was your only ram did not make the sacrifice worth more than 1,000.
Yeah, they valued power and might. So if you can only give 1 ram, sucks to be you. I'm gonna favor that guy who's giving me 500 rams.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it costs him nothing, even if he's the equivalent of a millionaire, I'm gonna favor that guy more because he's giving me more.
Honestly, as much as it might be like woke, liberal, whatever, the gods are so bad. Pagan gods are so awful.
Yes, they are.
That their absence in the film is great, because they're so evil. They're so evil in the play. And like you said, maybe it was like Homer being like purposely that way to show that you shouldn't worship these gods. But regardless of the intention, the gods are so evil. And I cannot see how you appreciate the gods of Greek or Roman mythology or any paganism, frankly, because all mythologies have these like evil little gods. They're all evil. Why are you worshiping them? They're awful. They're selfish. They're liars. They're totally capricious. They go back on their word. So yes, liars again, but even to you, the worshiper, they aren't all powerful. They often can't accomplish the things they set out to do. They are callous. They are destructive. And so they definitely play more of a role in the play than in the movie, because again, the movie is like purposely, they're not really there. Odysseus sees visions of Athena, but in the end, kind of, I would say strongly suggests that it's not really Athena. It's like a PTSD, schizophrenic vision of a priestess of Athena that Odysseus saw get killed. And so, yeah, I think the film benefits from the destruction of fake gods, whereas the play does not. It's not a virtue of the play.
No, that's true. The gods are a little bit more present in the play, less than in the Iliad. In the Iliad, they're literally there next to the humans. But yeah, you're right. I actually liked the interpretation for this movie that the visions of the gods or the interactions happen to coincide with natural phenomenon, or what he sees. This was my take. You comment below if you have a different take on who Athena is, but I did think that she was the priestess that was executed at the temple when he is sacking Troy with the Greeks. And that is an interesting portrayal of a god through a priestess that obviously he's traumatized by, that was murdered. But yeah, they're not directly present in the movie as they were in the play.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good. As you're saying, that's good. You don't want to see those losers.
Yeah, well, they're terrible characters. Yeah. Like, also, Hades doesn't make an appearance in Hades. And they go to Hades, but Hades isn't there. So all of that. Chiron is the blind guy, by the way.
Chiron's
there. So, like, there's mythological creatures there, and I guess, like, agents of the gods are there, including Chiron. But Chiron's not a god. And so, yeah, they're all missing. Athena doesn't say much, but I guess she's perfectly fine. So she's tolerable. Athena, like you said, in the play is intolerable. Like, so intolerable. She's like a trickster goddess. Awful, right? She sends this guy to his death that doesn't deserve the death. It's nuts. Again, the gods are viciously unlikable. And so I don't know if we call this a virtue, but whatever. The Christianization of the film version is just so much better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Poseidon is an absolute buffoon in the play. Instead of killing his son, Polyphemus, for eating people, he gets angry at Odysseus for blinding him. What's wrong with you?
Well, and again, like, Poseidon then, like, curses the ship, and so the men die and are shipwrecked and all the rest because of Poseidon's wrath, but Zeus and Athena favor Odysseus, and so it's, again, this, like, ineffective, weird god war where even if you worship the best, biggest god like Zeus, he can't save you from another god who's mad at you for a bad reason. It's not even a justified reason, it's a bad reason. These are not gods worthy of worship, and that's why Neo-Paganism, besides, like, the strongest thing that Neo-Paganism has is the shared virtues of Christianity. And so when they say, like, we need to get back to being manly men and favoring family and honor, and Christianity has made us weak, whatever. They lie about Christianity. They steal the virtues of Christianity. But we've shown that the virtues of Neo-Paganism are inferior, actually, to Christian virtues. And they always were. So even back to the Odyssey, they always were. And we haven't even gotten into how fake the gods are. But clearly we're alluding to all these problems with the gods. Neo-Paganism, even if you take it as a godless philosophy, i.e., like, you don't even believe in the gods and you're Neo-Pagan, just by, like, philosophy you're Neo-Pagan, which, what does that even mean? The philosophy's bad. But the gods are way worse. So, yeah, we've benefited greatly from leaving these evil, evil gods.
If you want a more in-depth video on problems with Neo-Paganism, don't just take us at our word. We have a dedicated episode just on the inconsistencies of Neo-Paganism or classical paganism.
Yeah, and maybe bringing it back all around, unless you have other scenes in the Odyssey, Sebastian. That's why we found our cause in serving the Lord Jesus Christ. That's why we're doing this episode, is because as much as we might laugh or not think anything of these kind of cultural moments, the margins are where things happen, meaning, like, even if the Odyssey has a marginal impact on the culture, that margin is important because everything happens at the margins. Like, every cultural moment ever only affects, like, a marginal amount of people, unless it's COVID or something. And even then, like, the amount of people that COVID truly changed is marginal, right? Like, most of us recovered back to our normal selves after even totally world-changing events like COVID. So if the Odyssey only moves, like, a portion of people, say 0.5% of the population, to react like, oh, the conservatives are wrong here. The Odyssey was great. I love Greek mythology. I love Neo-Paganism. Neo-Paganism is definitely, because it's so small, it's a movement that's growing. And that's why we react to this kind of thing, because this is worth talking about. The Neo-Pagans are wrong. The Odyssey is good because of Christian things, not because of Neo-Pagan things. And I don't want conservatives lauding the Odyssey because the real Odyssey is actually inferior to the film, because the film was like more Christian than the real Odyssey. And I don't want conservatives blasting the Odyssey because, you know, the hats weren't historically realistic. I know it's a complaint of yours, Sebastian, too. Yeah, whatever, okay. But that's not a serious problem with the Odyssey. The serious problem with the Odyssey would be if it was lauding pagan values, and I don't want people being trapped by things we've long caged. You know, the old ancient gods have been long buried because they're evil, and please do not resurrect them. We'll have another Nazi Germany situation going on if we do.
Oh yes, we don't want that. Please no. The Odysseus in the film, he is portrayed as more or less as an atheist. He refuses till I think he just concedes to just hold on to faith at the end when Calypso lets him go in the movie. But for most of the film, he refuses to worship the gods, I mean, for good reason. So I don't think that the movie could be seen as praising Neo-Paganism, thank God, because no one should. But I do wish that they had used clothing from the time period, you know, just ground the movie a little bit more. I actually like, you know, to be fair, since we're praising the movie artistically, it was really good. As a balance, some people were saying that the armors were off. Sure. I think you have so much money, you can make a little bit more effort. You know, the Lord of the Rings put a lot of effort in costumes and armor by using actual armor. You could have tried a little bit. Is there Bronze Age armor that looks very silly? Sure, there is, but there's some that doesn't. So you could have gotten even just hoplite, even, you know, if it's an anachronism. You could have just gone some hoplite armor, not some. What do you use? Oh, someone called it a Batman armor for Agamemnon. Oh, black. It looks like RoboCop.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to defend all of the artistic direction because, yes, they definitely make some of the characters look like a little ridiculously Hollywood, including Agamemnon, if you know. But once again, does this make a bad film? Not really. And Agamemnon, let's be real, has some credit, you know? Like, as much as he looks like RoboCop, he's kind of cool. All right, like, speaking as a dude in the audience, it's probably kind of cool, you know. Yes, he looks, you're like, whoa, clearly this is not real. Like, when you see his costume, you're like, he did not look like that. Everybody else, you can kind of buy it if you didn't know better, but this guy, you're like, okay, I know they didn't have Megatron coming in the front door, but it's kind of cool, so I give him a pass. And then all that, again, we haven't even touched on it, but whatever, in case you're unfamiliar with the things that conservatives have been complaining on. Yes, there's a trans person in the movie. Honestly, does it, I don't, you know, and I'm against the ideology, absolutely, 100%, to all the lengths of God's law. But does it affect the film? No, honestly, it doesn't. And as much as she's clearly not a man, she's supposed to be like a child soldier. All right, you know, like, fine. Honestly, it doesn't affect the film at all. Same with the racial mixings. Get a grip, guys. Come on. Like, I too am white. I too don't like when they make, you know, George Washington black or something, right? Like, because he wasn't. But these mythological people, do we really care? To me, it doesn't. I understand the creators might want it to mean something and show, you know, colored faces in film or something. I don't know. They might have some like perverse meaning behind it, but it doesn't really affect the film to me, in that it's Mediterranean. There's going to be a lot of skin tones. Black people do exist in this world. They would have existed in this world too. Yes, Helen of Troy was not black. There's no way. But does it really affect the film? I don't think so. It's not like they have. I think it's immersion breaking when like two white people have a black baby or something that's like clearly not. This is not the kid. But there's none of that happens, and so. All right, to me, none of it was immersion breaking. All the complaints on that front, that I don't care about.
I would ask these people, be consistent. If you're not okay with Helen of Troy being portrayed by a black actress, can get rid of Tom Holland and Matt Damon because they do not look Greek to me.
Right. And then you had said, Sebastian, I wasn't really following this, but one of the other complaints is that they're all speaking American English, modern American English.
Yes, very modernized. I am a purist when it comes to history. I actually appreciate the modernisms in this. Why? So you may ask, have you finally lost your mind, Sebastian? Probably did a long time ago. But if you read actual Greek plays in ancient Greek, which I more or less can do, and I recommend you do too, they speak like what regular people speak. Some plays, yes, are they grandiose and epic? When the narrator speaks, sure. But when you read dialogue between characters, like to me from the play from Aristophanes, The Wasps, the Greek that they use, it's pretty colloquial. It's how people would speak. And it is, I do not know the correct term for this, but when people speak in incomplete words, like what you doing, instead of saying, what are you doing? What you doing? Like stuff like that. Or like, yo,
Yes.
why are you sleeping? Yeah. Contractions. Sure. We can call it that. That's how they write it in Greek plays as well. Because in many cases, some of the characters were not sophisticated philosophers speaking to each other. They were soldiers or merchants or slaves. So they're going to speak like soldiers, merchants, or slaves.
Honestly, as far as elevated language, I think they have like one, maybe two instances of profanity in the movie, language-wise.
Yeah.
And like, it could have been much worse and still have been acceptable, I think, because they're soldiers, they're sailor soldiers. Like, if we're being realistic here, they probably used a ton of language. And the fact that they use hardly any in this film, really just like for a couple moments, and it's, to me, if you're going to use language, it was perfectly warranted when it was used. Fine. Never is it immersion breaking. Never does it seem out of place that everybody's speaking American English and that it's like normal American English, not high fluty tooty. In fact, sometimes when they are a little high flute and tootin', that's more immersion breaking, because suddenly you're like, is this a play? Suddenly I'm believing it's a movie and not like a real scene. You know, you get into the movie and then somebody's like speaking a little too eloquently. There's a little bit of that. So I would say some of the language might have done better to be de-elevated, in my humble opinion. But I am just one man.
I stand with you on this. As a classicist myself. Just kidding, I'm not a classicist.
Yeah, I think maybe it warrants a discussion on classical education at some point for our podcast. But it is an hour and 7 minutes in. Who is still watching this review? Thank you for listening. We are the Found Cause. Your found cause in serving the Lord Jesus Christ. I've been Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my virtual friend has been
Sebastian, the archivist.
Thank you for listening. If you want to see the rest of our episodes, we respond to live videos, we respond to many religions, we talk about apologetics and defending the faith of Christianity against Muslims and against Hindus and against atheists and against your local agnostic grandma. We do it all. We also will read scripture and talk about practical ways to apply life and budgeting and church website reviews. We have an extensive catalog of many episodes. We're in fact running out of ideas. So we would appreciate your comments in the comment section. Maybe we can react to your comments. Maybe you have some suggestions. We have a couple. Theodore is always cooking up stuff. You hardly see him in the podcast anymore, but he's cooking up an idea a week, essentially. So he's keeping us rolling. So Sebastian, too, to be fair. Thank you for listening. Bye.